Welcome to the present. Now that we've embarked on a little trip down memory lane, we now return to contemporary clinical psychology. And while this chapter doesn't cover every single contemporary issue and or controversy in the field, it covers some of the larger ones for sure. And like I mentioned in chapter 1, and at the beginning of this course, I am very much considering the content of the course, not just in the context of clinical psychology and that's it, but also in terms of related fields. Because for those of you who are curious about how much overlap there is, how much similarity, how much difference, the answer is that, generally speaking, a lot of the issues, for example, in this chapter, are not exclusive to psychologists. They do pertain to social workers and mental health counselors, among other subfields. Some of these issues may apply less, like prescription privileges, for example. There has been some consideration for master's level clinicians in some states to be offered the opportunity to have privileges or to go through the process in order to. But in any event, I say that just because this is bigger than clinical psychology. This is the field, the larger field of mental health, and those of us who are in the applied subfields that are psychology, counseling, social work, etc. All right, so prescription privileges. This is an area that obviously, like any issue, has at least two sides, usually more. But this is basically a movement in favor of considering psychologists, doctoral level psychologists, as being eligible to prescribe psychotropic medications in addition to your more traditional prescribers, such as doctors, psychiatrists who are doctors, but also general practitioners, primary care providers, nurse practitioners who are master's degree nurse practitioners, are also eligible to do prescription. They're trained in psychotherapy and prescribing. It's a great subfield, by the way. Being a nurse practitioner, you do have to go to nursing school, and then you get additional training and schooling. It's a master's level position. And there's so many different options. But for psychology, the movement is not that old. And as you can see, as of now, there are 3 states that have granted the privileges, and some of the videos that you see this week cover chapter 3. You'll see a video, I believe it's the Illinois lobbying effort for it. So you can get a sense of kind of what the tone is for kind of why it would be something to consider. And, being that there's more than one side, this is the side of why should we consider doctoral level psychologists as prescribing worthy. Well, one is the shortage of prescribers. And as I have worked the vast majority of my career, well, pretty much all of my postdoc years, so 16, 17 years, have been in rural areas in 2 different states. And interestingly, all of my training were in big cities, and all of my career after that has been in rural areas. It's near and dear to my heart, coming from a rural area, and also seeing that there's a lot of unique challenges in rural areas that don't always get a lot of attention. Certainly, there are unique issues specific to urban areas as well, but one unique challenge in rural areas, and certainly something that I've seen in my experience, is the shortage of prescribers. And psychiatry is a specialization of medicine, and people it's a long path. So people who choose to be doctors, they're in it for the long haul. And now we have nurse practitioners that do a lot less schooling who can prescribe, but we have a shortage of that as well. So one argument is that if we add psychologists to this, then we grow the pool even larger and we have more people equipped to not just do the therapy, but to also prescribe medication. Another benefit would be psychologists work with these clients directly. They're trained in mental health and mental illness, and they get more specialized training. Obviously, primary care physicians or doctors, they're well trained in what they do, and yet they're not trained as specifically for as long in the realm that those of us who are clinicians are. So it's a unique perspective that might make us very good at being considered prescribers. And other non-physician professionals do prescribe. So non-doctors prescribe. Nurse practitioners are not doctors. Certain segments in the healthcare industry, other medical professionals do prescribe. So in addition, it's convenient. A client can say, you're my therapist and you can prescribe. As of now, in the state of New York, we don't have it. And honestly, I don't know if I had the opportunity, if I would pursue it at this point in my career. Um, maybe it would take away from being here with you all, right? But really, the idea would be right now, if I have a client that needs medication, then I'm referring them to someone on my team who is a prescriber. And if I was a prescriber, I'd be able to say, hey, I could do your therapy and I can do the prescribing. So while we're working on building your skills and your coping, managing your symptoms, working on your wellness, I could be prescribing something that kind of takes the extreme edges off to allow the work in therapy to thrive even more. I would also be able to do it all myself. One-stop shopping would mean I could do all of the above. I would not have to rely on a prescriber as another part of my team to refer to and collaborate with. It would also be another way of identifying my profession. My identity would be as a therapist and as a prescriber. And it would be a further progression, an evolution in how I'm evolving beyond a psychotherapist. And of course, it's a big money maker, so it would bring money in. Additionally, you've got the other side. You've got reasons why it might not be such a good idea. What's the training? Is it specific enough? Is it general enough? Is it broad enough? Is it deep enough? Does it cover enough of the medicinal properties? Do you need to have more training? What if you miss a certain crucial part of training and then it becomes life-threatening to a client? How is it going to affect the identity? These two go together to me. First of all, what's my identity? Right now, I'm very clear. If I'm not a prescriber, I know what I do. So I'm not confused. What would I be? Am I a therapist? Am I a prescriber? Am I both? Am I neither? But the threats to psychotherapy, one of the issues is that sometimes we have clients who are more intent on finding a medication provider. They want immediate relief, and who could blame them? Therapy is a slow progression, it's an evolution. And medication sometimes can be something that is more immediate and relieving. And so, what if I have someone that's seeing me and they're like, cut to the chase, I need the meds. I don't want to be here right now. And, I don't want to be therapized. Maybe some other day, but give me the medicine, right? Because I'm in pain, I'm suffering. So, if I'm trying to say, I want to teach you the skills so that you don't have to be reliant on medications forever, it may be hard, and I might have to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And then I lose both services. Potential influence of pharmaceutical industry. They're the ones that would be, providing this medication and maybe samples and information, and how much would I be beholden to the industry? So that's to plant a little seed. Where do you sit on the issue? To be continued. Next, evidence-based practice and manualized therapy. So there are things called empirically supported therapies, which are not the same thing as evidence-based practice. ESTs have empirical support, meaning that there is research to support that this is a pretty good treatment. EBP is basically a practice that has had a certain number of research trials and studies and has had a lot of experience over time, legitimizing its existence as being something that has results. We actually have data to support it. And because of that, manuals are often what are used in the research itself to prove that it's worthy of the title of evidence-based. It's an evidence-based practice. Not all therapies are evidence-based. The ones that have enough technical generalization to be researched make the cut. And oftentimes, these are treatments that have a manual attached, almost like if you want to think of like a script, right? So there's a step-by-step kind of a recipe, a cookbook, if you will, to the treatment. That's manualized therapy. It's basically saying, session one, here's what you say, here's what you do. Tell the client this, offer them this assignment, do this, rate this, etc. Manualized therapy is something that younger therapists sometimes like when they're really trying to figure out, um, I don't want to mess this up. Am I doing this right? It can feel comforting to have a script, so to speak. Um, an evidence-based practice has definitely grown in popularity over time as we've become more of a science and as clinical psychology, remember the clinical scientist model, there's definitely a lot of people that want to make this field less touchy-feely. And so EBP is a step in that direction. And so therapy manuals have grown. And empirically supported, you still will see this and you'll still see empirically validated. Um, and in some cases, you will see a distinction. Like there are treatments that are empirically supported, and then you've got the evidence-based practice. But you're going to see some of these sometimes interchanged and almost assumed to be the same thing, while sometimes there can be differences. But you can see this is super young, right? Like the first treatments that were considered empirically validated, meaning they have some kind of validation through science and research, was in the 90s. And there are lists, there's websites. If you're interested in learning more about this, let me know. But basically, they're basically saying that evidence-based practice is a way of really kind of drumming up the game, upping the game, so that we're no longer a field where we talk about our feelings and kind of just see where it goes. Although I would argue that one thing that I've learned over the years is that there is no substitute for a good relationship, the alliance, aside from any skills and techniques that you might have. But evidence-based practice is a three-legged stool. These are the three prongs, so to speak. Research, the knowledge and training and capability of the clinician, and then, of course, the client. So the stool requires all three of these. You need good research, you need a competent clinician, and you need the qualities of the client, all three which work together. And if that does sound a little bit familiar and you're wondering why, if you took careers in psych, one of the potential articles that you could do your article summary critique on is the clinical psych one, and this was mentioned there. I'm going to pause there and start here on the next video.